What are the highlights here? What have I seen? Trump was directly asked by the interviewer if it's his responsibility to uphold the Constitution, and he said, I don't know. I'll ask my lawyers. I think that was his answer to basically everything. That's the highlight, right? Like, everyone's seen that clip. Everyone's seen that clip. I'll just show that clip because I don't know how far I'm going to make it in this. Honest to God, this is a humiliation ritual. Trump has mentally declined. He's not in charge of his own administration. He is the doddering mascot that everyone has to suck up to. He's the senile grandpa. Everyone else wants to get written into the will, so everyone's like baking him cookies and giving him milk. You know, everyone's trying to make sure they get written in at the end, and his word is law, but he also has no idea what's going on. So how long am I going to last? Well, I don't know. Ask your mother. The answer, a pretty long time. Where's the clip? Yeah, there we go. We'll just skip the, they're just acknowledging this from the bat.
Agree. Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said.
So like I said, it's a humiliation ritual, right? Like, they are allowing Trump to do interviews because Trump wants to do interviews, and they're only giving Trump information that they are comfortable with him drip feeding to the press because he has no self-control. The problem is that he's like lost it to the point now where he can't even pretend to, like, he no longer has the faculties necessary to answer with a definitive yes when he's asked, do you believe it's your job to uphold the Constitution? Because the obvious answer from his perspective is yes, and that's all I've done. It's the radical left lunatics who want to destroy the Constitution, right? Easy. Any one of his toadies in the Oval Office or in the White House would say that. That's like easy one right there. That one's for free. But does he say that? No, because he's gone, man. He's gone.
President Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here to mark your first 100 days in office. It has been an incredibly busy 100 days. You've signed more than 140 executive orders. You've been focused on the border, the economy, foreign policy. What is your biggest goal in the next 100 days?
Could it be that he doesn't give a f to even say the fake answer and more as well? No, I think that he thinks he's right, telling the truth, and I think that he thinks everyone else is wrong. His behavior in the past weeks has like completely reshaped my understanding of his psyche. I no longer think he's even capable of lying. I'm not joking. Like his mind is like a sieve. Like, it just drips through. I genuinely don't think he could lie if he wanted to. I think he just says things that he thinks are true. Whether that's him taking things that he knows are wrong and believing them as though they're truth, or him just blustering through the information that he's told, which I think is more likely. I don't really know. I don't think he's consciously lying, basically.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of results. We've already seen them on the border. We have the best border in the history of our country. It was 99.999, and nobody ever thought that was possible. In fact, Biden, if you remember, said he has to get legislation. And I said, no, you just need a new president. And I guess I was right. We have the best border we've ever had. We're doing great on illegal immigration. We are being hit hard by judges that I think they're trying to take away the power of the presidency. I was elected in a massive landslide and a big vote. We won the swing states. We won the popular vote. We won the district votes by tremendous numbers. We won everything. And one of the primary reasons I was elected was to get people out of our country that were allowed. We have prisoners, we have murderers, we have terrorists in our country, we have people from mental institutions that are seriously insane. They all came in through Biden's open border policy, and I was elected to get them out and to seal the border, but to get them out. And we'll have judges, they're activist judges, they're saying, well, you know, you don't have the right to take out murderers and people that you don't even want to talk about. These are really some really bad criminal people, and they're here illegally. So, you know, they talk about your next question will be due process, but they talk about due process, but do you get due process when you're here illegally?
We're going to talk about.
Yes. So the reason I say humiliation ritual is because I think that it's a little bit, and look, I'm not really much of a patriot. it is a little bit extremely humiliating to be in a country where the head of state and government, where the president is obviously not only not mentally there, but that his handlers aren't even trying to set him up to appear as though he's there. There are two possibilities. One of them is that Trump is being very directly and very deliberately controlled, you know? This examples of this happening. You could argue Reagan in his second term. To an extent, you could argue Biden towards the end of his term, arguably maybe his entire term. That is to say, they're not all there, but the people around them are on it. And I think that was true with Biden. I think that the people around Biden were like, okay, we're going to protect him from the press. We're going to protect him from his own cabinet secretaries. We're going to protect him from everyone because obviously he can barely talk, you know. We're going to try to like orchestrate this. We're going to puppet. We're going to Weekend at Bernie's this. The other possibility, and that, by the way, happens all the time. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson's wife. Exactly. That's happened many times in America and in other countries. You have world leaders who are not all there. They're not fully present. They can't really do their job. However, it would be very destabilizing and also like humiliating for them to be removed because of it. So you have other people pick up the slack. That is normal. I also think to an extent that's what happened during Trump's first term. I think that Trump was back then also like kind of an idiot. He wasn't anywhere near as compromised as he is right now, but he was still an idiot, you know. He would try to do stupid things, and the people around him, neocons, seasoned Republican officials, you know, veterans of the political game, would go, okay, sure, Donnie, and then they would just do what they were going to do anyway. That's the reason why, in spite of Trump tweeting like an idiot throughout the entirety of his first term, very little of it actually got done. For the most part, under Trump in the first term, the country ran kind of normally. That's true. With the exception of some of the tariffs that he implemented, which were his idea, and what he enabled at the border, like family separation, most of the running of the country from a federal perspective happened basically as it normally does. And that's because Trump didn't really decide that, you know? But this time, I think it's more likely, based on the fact that he's still having these interviews, based on the fact that he's answering the way he's answering, that we have a very rare situation, which is that no one is picking up the slack. You have an incompetent, unworkable leader, and everyone around him is just kind of there. I think you have people like Stephen Miller who are obviously putting more effort into trying to guide Trump towards the positions you want him to have, but it doesn't seem like they have a handle on things. It seems like they're letting too much of his obvious mental incompetence leak out into the public. They're not really like keeping a handle on things within the White House, within the administration. It's a humiliation ritual because like they're not even pretending, I guess. Does that make sense? Do you all understand my like thought process? The reason I'm saying this is because I want to frame appropriately the way I talk about Trump and the administration in the future, right? If the administration was competent, they would be covering for Trump the way they did in his first term. In the first term, it was mostly because he's stupid. Now it's because he's stupid and mentally feeble. But they're not doing that. They're just letting it all leak out. So, I don't know. I don't know, man. I just wish we knew who was actually running this bitch. That's my point. I don't think anyone is. I think Stephen Miller is the most likely candidate for the person who's whispering in his ear the most, but I don't think there's any actual control. I think that if right now, if you are a member of Trump's cabinet, it's basically lawless. You can do or say anything that you want as long as it's more or less in line with what Trump wants, because at the end of the day, he's still the grandpa with the will. Like, as long as what you're doing feels like it's in line with that, it's free game. You can enrich yourself, you can engage in corruption, you can fire, you can hire, it doesn't matter. As long as you stay in Trump's good graces, you're fine. But there's no overriding authority. There's no sensible rulemaking coming down from the top. Anyway, I'm rambling a lot.
About all of that. We are going to talk about deportation, but I want to start on the economy, sir, which obviously the biggest issue for voters. We got new numbers today, better than expected job numbers.
Much better.
At the same time, the economy shrank in the first quarter. You've been arguing all week that this is President Biden's economy. Is this now your economy, sir?
Well, I think certain aspects of it are. Costs are. Well, I was able to get down the costs, but even that, it takes a while to get them down, but we got them down good. We lost $5 to $6 billion a day with Biden. 5 to 6 billion. And I've got that down to a great number right now in a record time. You know, we're talking about 100 days. But just think of what that is. $5 billion a day we're losing on trade. And we were very tough with China, as you know. We put 145% tariff on. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing. And we've essentially cut off trade relationships by putting that much of a tariff on. And that's okay. We've gone cold turkey. That means that we're not losing. You know, we lost $1 trillion to China. $1 trillion. That means we're not losing $1 trillion when we go cold turkey.
Again, when he says we lose money to other countries, this is what he calls a subsidy. This is when we buy things from them. So, like, if you lose money to your grocery store, you get food, usually. Or, like, hand soap. They usually cover that. They have that in grocery stores. You're buying things. That's what he's referring to. Again, I don't think he's lying. I think he's wrong. I don't think he's lying. I don't think a person capable of dishonesty at this point would choose to be dishonest in this way. It is incoherent and ineffective to their own strategy. It's too crazy to be a deliberate strategy. If you go back and look at him back in his first term, I think he lied all the time, and I think that it was obvious when he was doing kind of like a crafted narrative.
Because we're not doing business with them right now. And they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal very badly. We'll see how that all turns out, but it's got to be a fair deal. But think of it, we were losing $1 trillion, and that was a big part of the $5 million a day.
And I want to talk about China, but just staying on this idea of the economy. On the eve of your inauguration, the stock market spiked. You called it the Trump effect. Are you?
It spiked because I was elected president.
Well,
it spiked because of anybody else. It spiked because they see what I'm going to do. They know what I'm going to do with the tariffs and everything else. And I think it's actually working out better than we anticipated. Did you see oil prices? Did you see gasoline is now below, in many cases, in many states, below $2 a gallon, $1.98, $1.99, $1.97?
Well, my question, sir, is when the stock market spiked, you said this is the Trump effect. When the numbers weren't so good earlier this week, you said it's the Biden effect. Are you only taking ownership of the good numbers and not the bad numbers?
I think he did a lot of very bad things, and despite some of the bad things, we're overcoming them. But he was bad on the border. He was bad on the economy. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Look, Biden gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. People, it didn't matter what they made because they were losing their shirt because of costs. Now take a look at what happened. Oil is down, gasoline is down, groceries are down, eggs. You were the one that asked me. You asked me about eggs. It was the first week. I didn't even know anything about what were you talking about. Egg prices were so high you couldn't buy eggs. They didn't have any eggs. And they said Easter is going to be a disaster. Well, we had Easter at the White House, and we had thousands of eggs, and they were down 87%.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Why didn't Biden blame Trump for everything? Unironically, like liberal civility, and because he's a massive pussy. I think Biden also had to dial back the antagonism a little bit because of his cognitive decline, the fact that he couldn't speak that well. I think Biden, like, as he spoke back during Obama's first term, would have torn into Trump a lot more, just because it's easier to be antagonistic when you don't sound like you're dying yourself, you know? Trump has really been aided by his decades on TV. That really is the difference between him and Biden. He's cognitively, Trump is way behind Biden. Way behind. Like Biden's tired and can't speak well and is definitely like forgetful and so on. Like, you know, he's definitely like down there, right? Trump is way the below Biden in terms of cognitive ability. In terms of functionality, this shit is effortless to Trump. And that's the only reason why it looks any different. Credit where credit is due. Trump is born to be in front of a camera. He just knows how to handle himself in front of one. It's on autopilot. It doesn't matter if his cognition's down. He doesn't have to think about this stuff. He just does it reflexively.
Of course, the spike was because of bird flu, but when does it become the Trump economy?
Why do you say that?
Well, tell me,
we had the same bird flu as he had.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now, and I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy, and the bad parts are the Biden economy, because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything, from his auto pen, which I'm sure he knew nothing about some of the things he was supposedly signing, to immigration. You look at what happened with immigration, how bad it was. Think of it. We have murderers 11,888 murderers, many of them murdered more than one person. Think of that. And they're in our country. Now, we've gotten a lot of them out, and we know who many of them are, and we're on the hunt. But why would anybody do that? Why would anybody, who could do such a thing? Would it allow hundreds of thousands and even millions of people into our country who are criminals and murderers at the highest level? Who would do this?
But, sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, the stock market dropped. It's been volatile. It has since gone up.
It is,
do you take responsibility for that? Yeah. Do you take responsibility when it dropped?
Ultimately, I take responsibility for everything, but I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months. But the stock market, look at what's happened in the last short period of time. Didn't it have 9 or 10 days in a row or 11 days where it's gone up? And the tariffs have just started kicking in, and we're doing really well psychologically. I mean, the fake news was giving me such press on the tariffs.
Democrats should be talking about how immigrants literally commit less crime. Not a good strategy, not a good narrative for the national. You're still talking about what Republicans want you to talk about, which is immigrants and crime. You should talk about how the real crime committers are Republicans. Talk about all the mass shooters, the neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and so on. Talk about Trump's connection with Epstein. You have to deflect. You're not really deflecting from an argument because their argument is wrong. It's empirically wrong. But you want to redirect that energy. You don't want to be on the defensive. We've been on the defensive for too long. They come up with a lie, we have to waste time correcting it. No one listens to the correction.
The tariffs are going to make us rich. We're going to be a very rich country.
So let's talk about the tariffs. And I want to ask you about something you said this week. Got a lot of attention. You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. Are you saying that your tariffs will cause some prices to go up?
No, I think the tariffs are going to be great for us because it's going to make us rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable. We had a trade.
So for one, unironic degrowther argument, which is incredible, from Trump of all people. For two, you can really tell the way he latches on to any given way of arguing a point that everything he says is just somebody talking to him. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump said to Stephen Miller or someone like Stephen Miller, you know, they're saying tariffs are going to make something more expensive. That doesn't make any sense. It's going to make us rich. And Stephen Miller says, no, it's going to make us very, very rich. But also, you know, people don't need 30 dolls from China, cheap plastic dolls, you know? It's fine if they have fewer. And then he just runs with it, you know? He's just regurgitating what he's told. It's like the Joe Rogan thing, except Joe Rogan mostly did it to come across as agreeable. Like Joe Rogan was always a grifter. Trump actually is like that. His mind has just enough space to pull in a few ideas, and they drip out everywhere he goes.
Trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars with China.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30.
He doesn't understand what he's saying. See, he doesn't understand what he's saying. He doesn't understand what the implications are. Oh, they're not going to have $30. They're going to have $2 because they're more expensive. No, they're not going to be more expensive. So you're saying they're going to be fewer products? No, there aren't going to be fewer products. He doesn't know what it means. He's just saying the things that he's being told.
3, they don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
But you're basically saying...
5 is actually not enough pencils for a lot of things. If you're using pencils day to day, I don't think that's actually enough. I think that's actually... Being limited to 5 pencils would be considered like a severe poverty in a lot of poor countries on Earth, I think.
There could be some supply shortages because of the tariffs.
We don't have to waste money on a trade deficit with China for things we don't need, for junk that we don't need.
Well, prices are already going up on some popular items, tires, strollers.
This is such a dishonest interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline. And let me tell you, when you have the big thing, what he did, he spent like a stupid person, which he was, but he spent like a very stupid person. And that was bad for inflation. But what really killed us with inflation was the price of energy. It went up to $3.90, even $4, and in California, $5 and $6, right? Okay. I have it down to $1.98 in many states right now. when you go that much lower on energy, which is ahead of my prediction, because I really thought I could get it down into the 250s. We have it down at $1.98 in numerous places. But when you say costs are going up, even mortgage rates are going down.
Well, but let me give you some examples. These are actual examples. So you're saying the prices that are going down, some prices are going up. Tires, strollers, some clothing in the wake of your tariffs.
That's peanuts compared to energy. Energy is 60% of the cost.
But sir, you campaigned on a promise to bring prices down on day
Well, I don't know. When
one.
you say strollers are going up, what kind of a thing? I'm saying that gasoline is going down. Gasoline is thousands of times more important than a stroller someplace.
But what do you say to Americans who say they voted for you because they want and they need relief right now?
And they're getting it.
Right now? What about those
even mortgage rates?
different items I just
Mortgage
mentioned?
rates are going down, despite the fact that we have a stubborn Fed.
But you said even dolls could cost a couple bucks more.
Maybe they might, but you don't need to have, as I said, $35. You can have 2, 3, 4, and save a lot of money. We don't need to feed the beast.
I guess you're talking about this.
I did see this. I saw that the reason why Trump is fixating on the 198 gas price figure, which is not what gas costs anywhere in the United States. RBOB gasoline futures have traded below 198 per gallon. It's possible he just saw that number and he's running with it. Of course, he does believe it. Again, like I am fully committed to the position that Trump never thinks he's lying. That is what I believe now. I think that if he says something, he believes that it's true, which might also be the reason why he's doing these interviews. Because if you have an interview with somebody like J.D. Vance or Scott Bessent, I feel like they're a lot more vulnerable to an interviewer because Scott Bessent and J.D. Vance know they're lying and they are more psychologically susceptible to some strategies to get them to trip up, which J.D. Vance has tripped up multiple times when he's interviewed about stuff he said. Remember when he admitted he likes to make stories when he was confronted by an interviewer over the they're eating the cats and dogs thing? You never got an admission like that out of Trump. Why? Because Trump believed it. You get it? By the way, food prices are actually up. Yeah, prices are going up right now. Obviously, what Trump is saying is incorrect. It's just, I don't know, really revealing how gone he is, I guess. You know? What beast is being fed $30? I think he means China. When he says feed the beast, I think he means China. But I don't know. It's crazy stuff.
Transition cost. How long should people expect that transition to last, Mr. President?
I can't tell you that. I can tell you that we're making a lot of money. We're doing great. Again, we're losing more than $5 billion a day. $5 billion a day. You don't talk about that. And right now, we're going to be at a point very soon where we're making money every day. Look,
how soon?
We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars with China. Now we're essentially not doing business with China. Therefore, we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars.
It is a theory of trade so stupid that it doesn't have an ideology attached to it. Nobody believes this. There is no economist that believes this or argues this. No one. There's no ideology. There's no name to it. It is a it is a misunderstanding of economics in line with not grasping object permanence. The idea that when you trade with another country, you're losing money, so that if you don't trade, you get to save money. It is, well, you know, it actually would have been kind of true during the feudal age under mercantilism, but not anymore. But why don't the reporters ever call him out for that? Well, I would like it if reporters were more direct with Trump. The problem, again, is that you're literally arguing with a senile old man. He has no coherent argument or position. He doesn't believe the ramifications of anything that he says. Like, look at what just happened there. He said people will, rather than having $30, they'll have 2 and they'll be more expensive. And she asked, so will prices go up? He says no. So will shelves be empty? He says no. What do you do with that? He doesn't understand what he's saying. You're talking to like a doll that has the wind up, like the pull string on the back. It's just words to him. Remember how earlier we were talking about how in Freerun the demons fake human behavior, but they don't understand it cognitively. They're predators that feast on people, and the way they do that is by mimicking our behavior magically. He's doing that. That's what he's doing. There's no underlying. What was that one bit in the show where the demon lied and said, my father taught me how to do this because it was a way of gaining trust from the human he was talking to. And then the human left, and another demon asked, what's a father? And the person who said, my father trained me to do that, said, I don't know. It's like that. You can't have a conversation with them. You can't really have a conversation with Trump. He has no idea what he's doing or what he's talking about.
Very simple.
You take me to my next question, which is about China. They've been making a number of public statements.
Very positive statements the last 24 hours.
Well, and most recently, they said before talks could happen, the U.S. would need to remove unilateral tariffs. Would you consider dropping the tariffs to get China to the negotiating table?
No. First of all, you're giving me a statement that was said a week ago. You're not giving the statement that was said today.
I have May 2nd Chinese Commerce Ministry.
Do you know what they said today?
The U.S. wants to negotiate.
Forward.
It should show sincerity by preparing to take actions in correcting its mistakes and canceling the unilateral tariffs.
They made, first of all, they made numerous statements.
Yes, they've made numerous statements.
How many people speak for China? It's like 50
they've made numerous
I
statements.
can give you a statement for any occasion.
Yes.
But they said today they want to talk. Look, China, and I don't like this, I'm not happy about this, China's getting killed right now. They're getting absolutely destroyed. Their factories are closing. Their unemployment is going through the roof. I'm not looking to do that to China. Now, at the same time, I'm not looking to have China make hundreds of billions of dollars and build more ships and more army tanks and more airplanes.
So you're not, just to be very clear, you're not dropping the tariffs against China to get them to the negotiating table. Those tariffs are staying on.
Why would I do that?
Would you lower them?
At some point, I'm going to lower them because otherwise you could never do business with them.
Yeah.
And they want to do business very much. Look, their economy is really doing badly. Their economy is...
Remember, he just said that it's good that we're not trading with China because now we keep the money and save it rather than giving it to them. But now he's saying, well, of course, in the future, we have to trade with China. He doesn't understand what any of these statements mean. The whole point was to bring back manufacturing, remember? But also the point is to use it as leverage to bring down something, the trade imbalance, but also we have to trade with them. But also the trade imbalance isn't even the issue because we don't want to give them our currency at all. Like, there's no... I know I keep saying this. I just think it's really important to understand the extent to which we as a nation are being humiliated by the trotting out of this man as our head of state, you know, in spite of his obvious mental incompetence.
Collapsing.
So small businesses say they are being hurt by the Chinese tariffs, and some could be forced to shut down.
And many businesses are being helped.
Are you
Look at the
considering
automobile
tariff
business.
relief for small businesses?
Why do you always mention that, you know, you pick up a couple of little businesses? What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune because of the tariffs. Do you know that the union, the head of the union, who was no fan of mine, Sean Fain, I guess his name is, right? He didn't endorse me. The Teamsters did. A lot of people did. A lot of unions did. But he didn't. He couldn't stand me. Now he's saying, wow, what's Trump's done for the automobile? I can't believe it. I assume he's going to probably now say the next thing he can say is, I endorse this guy. He's the greatest I've ever seen. He can't believe it's happened. He said, we've been waiting 40 years for somebody to do what Trump is doing. So why don't you mention the big car industry?
This is why I criticize Sean Fain for what he did, of course. I think there's just the idea of this like selective endorsement of low IQ fascist economic policy is indefensible.
Instead of mentioning somebody that's doing strollers.
Well, I'm just asking you about small businesses. Are there any discussions about giving any relief to small businesses?
They're not going to need it.
Okay. Are these
They're going to make so much money.
Are these tariffs?
If you build your product here. Remember, there are no tariffs if you build your product here. It's very easy. It's very simple.
Are these tariffs permanent, Mr. President?
Depends on what you're talking about. One of the things that is going to bring and has brought... So I think we probably have close to $9 trillion of investments coming into this country. Mm-hmm. If you look at other presidents, there's never been anything like that. This is over a period of 2 months. You got to give me a little break on the 1 month because we're 3 months. But, you know, let's say we had to get started. We had a lot of fake news at the beginning, so we had to beat that down. But so let's say in 2 months. So in just a short period of time.
Major figures in logistics industry saying it's already too late to reverse course and an extinction level asteroid's headed towards U.S. small business. Oh, yeah, for sure. Small business is basically done. At least most of them are. The only companies that are going to be able to survive these tariffs are going to be the big box stores, you know, stores that can build massive inventory, that can reroute from different sources, that can engage in the trickery necessary to avoid paying the highest tariff. Small businesses already have trouble competing with big businesses, but it's all those trends are going to accelerate rapidly.
Time, a matter of a couple of months, we have the largest number ever in history invested in the United States and committed. We have between guaranteed, spoken for, and people that are going to make a decision and announce it pretty soon, close to $9 trillion. We've never had anything close. Now, that's Apple building $500 billion worth of plants. They always built their plants in China. Now they're building their plants over here. That's the biggest computer company, the biggest.
They're actually moving their production to India and Vietnam.
Chip company in the world. You know, the chip company from Taiwan, which is the biggest in the world, is committed for $500 billion. Another one's committed for $300 billion. We have companies, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And let me tell you the other thing, very importantly, automobile companies, plant after plant after plant, Toyota, Honda, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. I mean, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And I don't like this, but it happens to be. They're stopping work in Mexico, and they're stopping work in Canada, and they're all moving here.
This is important, though. You're not taking the possibility that these tariffs could be permanent off the table. Some of them.
Oh, I wouldn't do that, because if somebody thought they were going to come off the table, why would they build in the United States?
Let me ask you
You
about,
understand that, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's why I'm asking, because there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty for CEOs, for business owners. They want to know,
See, I don't
are
think
these
there is
tariffs permanent?
I think there's only uncertainty in the fake news. I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, I've been very rigid, very strong on it, but I will say I'm flexible. Like with respect to parts made outside of the country, I gave the automobile companies a little extra time. You know, you're talking about 15% and then 10% of the parts put in a car. I gave them a little extra time without penalizing them. And I did that only to help, you know, companies. We're looking to help companies. We want them to thrive and to hire a lot of people, and that's what's happening.
Let me ask you about some of what Wall Street has said. Some people on Wall Street have expressed concerns that the possibility of a recession is increasing. And I want to know what you think about that.
I can't even follow his logic. Again, he's just saying stuff that he's been told and threading it together through his, at this point, near instinctual mastery of the weave. It's not, again, he's not like thinking about what he's saying. Why bother listening to this guy? He lies endlessly. Well, leaving aside the fact that he's not lying, he is the president.
Are you comfortable with the country potentially dipping into a recession for a period of time if you are able to achieve your long-term goals?
Well, you know, you say some people on Wall Street say, well, I like to tell you something else. Some people on Wall Street say that we're going to have the greatest economy in history. Why don't you talk about them? Because some people on Wall Street say this is the greatest thing that ever happened.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at, though. It's the same question.
Yeah, there are many people on Wall Street say this is going to be the greatest windfall ever happened.
And that's my question.
Remember
the
this.
long term. Yeah. Is it okay in the short term to have a recession?
This. Look, yeah, everything's okay. What we are, I said, this is
irresponsible platforming. He's the president. I understand you're upset with him. Why are you being stupid?
Transition period. I think we're going to do fantastically. One of your colleagues on another fake news station, ABC, said, do you guarantee 100% that a certain person is going to do a fantastic job as, let's say, Secretary of Defense, okay? Because that was the question. I said, what kind of a question is that? Do I guarantee 100%? Nobody guarantees 100%. But I will say this. I think we're going to have an economy the likes of which we've never had before. You know, my 4 years were phenomenal, as you know, the stock market. In fact, even though we had to go through the COVID thing, that horrible situation with COVID, we did numbers, and when I gave it over, when I handed it over, the election was rigged, and because of that, we have a lot of problems, by the way. But when I handed it over, what happened? The market was higher than it was just previous to COVID coming in. Yeah. Nobody could believe it. The stock market I'm talking about.
I don't want to look back, but you did take your case to court about that. You took your case to court about your allegations against the election. Let me ask you,
There's no question about it. The election was rigged. The facts are in, and it's still being litigated. Let's go.
You did take your case to court more than 60 times and didn't win those cases.
I won a lot of court cases.
Just to button that up, though, sir. Just to button that up.
What are you talking about?
How worried are you?
Are we talking about the election
Let's talk about here and now. Let's talk about
the
here and now.
election of 2020?
Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about here and now. Are you worried about a recession?
No,
Okay.
no, no. I think we're going to have the greatest economic.
I mean, are you worried it could happen? Do you think it could happen?
Anything can happen, but I think we're going to have the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to have the greatest economic boom in history.
Another funny consequence of his inability to lie, honestly, I think, is the fact that he no longer answers or questions with a definitive yes than any other politician in the world. Any politician in the world, if they were asked, are you 100% confident in the person you pick for the job? So you're sure there will be no recession? Would say, of course. Of course I am. But Trump, because he's all about the honesty, right? He's like, well, I can't guarantee that, which is true, right? You know, he's been out like, well, do you think there will be a recession? He's like, I can't tell the future, which is, I mean, the correct. I mean, it's true. I don't know.
Let me ask you about this call to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos this week in response to a report that Amazon was going to display tariff costs next to product prices. Are you going to punish CEOs who increase their prices because of tariffs?
I think what is a great misnomer is the word tariff in many cases. It's not, to me, I don't view it as a tax. I view it as an incentive for people to come into the United States and build plants, factories, offices, a lot of things. I think it's an incentive, but the thing that's not known is if you look back and see, oftentimes like China or Vietnam or other countries, not just China, because China's an abuser, but there are other abusers. Many of them are friends, the so-called, I say friend and foe, and friend is oftentimes worse than foe. But what people don't understand is, and this is a lot, the country eats the tariff, the company eats the tariff, and it's not passed along at all.
Well, some CEOs are saying they're going to have to pass it on. So how do you deal with those CEOs?
But the company,
how do you deal with those CEOs?
China is eating the tariffs right now.
What do you say to those CEOs who are saying we might have to pass this on to the consumer?
Well, they say that because maybe it's to their advantage to say it.
Will
Maybe
you punish them?
No, because you know what? I want them to build plants in the United States. That way they don't have any tariffs. See, tariffs will, and not only will, look at what's happened. In 2 months, we're close to $9 trillion of investment. We've never been anywhere near that.
What did you say to Jeff Bezos?
He's just a very nice guy. We have a relationship. I asked him about it. He said, well, I don't want to do that. And he took it off immediately.
So he changed course. And will you take that same tactic with other CEOs if you
I'll
feel
always
like
call people if I disagree with them. If I think that somebody's doing something that's incorrect, wrong, or maybe hurtful to the country, I'll call. Absolutely. Wouldn't you want me to call? Biden wouldn't call because he didn't know what was happening, but I do.
Takes me to my next question. Today's strong jobs report.
I still think Bezos will put it back. Yeah, it could be like a first term bit where Trump gets mad about something and people say they won't do it. And then when he changes his attention to something else, they just do it anyway because it doesn't matter. Yeah, his position on this, he genuinely does seem to think that China is the one paying for the tariffs, which again, like there's no getting past that. I mean, that's the opinion of the vast majority of his voters too.
Report likely means, not clear, but likely means the Fed is less likely to lower interest rates.
Well, he should lower them, and at some point he will. He'd rather not because he's not a fan of mine. He just doesn't like me because I think he's a total stiff. And, it's just one of those things. He should lower them. And I wish the people that are on that board would get him to lower because we are at a perfect time. It's already late, but he should lower interest rates.
Do you rule out removing Fed Chair Jerome Powell?
I'm not, I get to change him very quickly anyway. It's in a very short period of time.
In 2026. You're not going to remove, you don't have plans to remove him before 2026 when his time's up?
That was a total, why would I do that? I get to replace the person in another short period of time.
Okay. This week, you reshuffled your national security team.
Yeah.
You moved National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to UN ambassador. Just to remind our viewers, Waltz, of course, started that unsecure text chain where sensitive information was shared. Mr. President, was that move a punishment?
No, I just think he'll do a nice job in the new position. Marco's doing an outstanding job. No, Marco won't keep, Marco's very busy doing other things, so he's not going to keep it long term. We're going to put somebody else in. But I think Mike, as you know, he's a fine guy, and I think he'll do a very good job, knows the countries, knows leadership, and I think he'll do a very good job at the United Nations. And in the meantime, Marco's really doing something special, and it's going to work out very well.
We're hearing some potential names. Stephen Miller's name, one of your longtime, most loyal aides, His name has been talked about as a potential national security advisor. Is he someone you're looking at?
Well, I'd love to have Stephen there, but that would be a downgrade. Stephen is much higher in the totem pole than that, in my opinion.
Can you tell us who the front runner is?
What is that if not a confirmation? If anyone is the shadow president, it's got to be him. It's got to be him. Play it again. Yeah.
His name has been talked about as a potential national security advisor. Is he someone you're looking at?
Well, I'd love to have Stephen there, but that would be a downgrade. Stephen is much higher in the totem pole than that, in my opinion.
Can you tell us who the front runner is right now?
I have a lot of people that want it. I will tell you.
To be clear, by the way, Stephen Miller officially is just the deputy chief of staff. Like, he's essentially the top. He's the head secretary of the president. Like, he doesn't have anywhere near the amount of institutional power that many people in the cabinet have. Though it does put him in essentially in a very close to Trump's ear, right?
I have everybody calling. Everybody wants to be a part of this administration. So at some point we'll, probably do that. There's a theory, Henry Kissinger did both. There's a theory that you don't need two people, but I think I have some really great people that could do a good job.
So Secretary Rubio could continue to have both jobs indefinitely?
He could, yeah, he could. But I think he even would like to probably see, because it is a little bit different. But in the meantime, he'll handle it. And I think Mike, if that goes forward, he still has to get approved. But I think Mike will do a very good job at the United Nations.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, obviously also on that unsecure text chain, he was sharing sensitive information. Are you looking for a new Secretary of Defense?
No, not even a little bit. No. Pete's going to be great.
His job is safe right now?
We're doing a fantastic job against the Houthis, who like blowing ships up and watching them sink in the ocean. We're hitting them very hard. No, he's doing a very good job.
His job is safe right now?
Totally safe.
Okay. Let's talk about the border. Okay. Let's talk about deportations. Border crossings are at their lowest level ever recorded. Is the border...
Is that good?
Is the border now secure?
Yeah, it's really secure.
It's absolutely
Isn't that good
secure.
that when you say that, doesn't that just sound good? After being abused for years by an incompetent president that allowed people to pour through an open border, criminals from all over the world, murderers and insane people from mental institutions and insane asylums, isn't it a beautiful thing when you say it's the most secure it's ever been in the history of our country? Isn't that a nice statement?
Well, I'm curious to know what it means. You declared a national emergency on the southern border. The order is still in place.
By the way,
even though you're saying
exactly
the
what you
secure.
said. It means we have the most secure border we've ever had.
Well, and I guess the question becomes, when will you know that the emergency is over? Are you planning to lift it at some point? Is it necessary? Because obviously the military is involved. Will you lift that emergency?
Well, the biggest emergency is the courts aren't allowing us to take really.
We're going to talk about that, but talk to me first about this.
That's to me the emergency.
Talk to me first about this.
The border
emergency.
now is not the emergency. The border is it's all part of the same thing, though. The big emergency right now is that we have thousands of people that we want to take out, and we have some judges that want everybody to go to
Some
court.
of them you appointed, sir, including
right.
3 on the Supreme Court.
They change. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how that happens, but they do change.
Just to button this up, though, are you planning to lift that emergency order anytime soon, now that the border's secure?
No, we have an emergency. We have a massive emergency. Overall, it's an overall emergency.
It's remarkable. The situation at the border is an emergency, but that's not even the real emergency. The real emergency is that the judges won't let us deport people without giving them due process. Oh, so the emergency's over? Nah, the emergency's sticking around.
On immigration, and if the courts don't allow us to take people out, if we had to have a court case, think of it, every single person, we have millions of people. We're going to have millions of court cases. Figure 2 weeks a court case, it would be 300 years.
So let's talk about this, because
Yep, that is due process. That is how it works.
obviously, you've had a back and forth with the Supreme Court. In a 9-0 decision, the Supreme Court directed your administration to facilitate the return. You've talked about this in the past, of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from a prison in El Salvador, whose deportation your administration called an administrative error. You said in a recent interview you could bring him back, but you won't. Are you defying the Supreme Court, sir?
No, I'm relying on the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, who's very capable, doing a great job, because I'm not involved in the legality or...
Just saying. Also, when it comes to getting a prisoner who's been unlawfully sent to another country, that would be a matter of state. That is 100% the executive branch. That is, in fact, the president's job as the head of state. You know, that would be Trump and Marco Rubio, who would be responsible for the return of that person to America. But again, like, it's just he has handlers, you know?
Or the illegality. I have lawyers to do that. And that's why I have a great DOJ. We have a great one. We had a very corrupt one before. Now we have a great one. And they're not viewing the decision the way you said it. They don't view it that way at all. They think it's a totally different decision.
Well, you say you have the power to bring him back, though. Your attorney general says, quote, that's up to El Salvador. Just to put a fine point on this, do you have the power to bring Abrego Garcia back as the Supreme Court?
Well, I have the power to ask for him to come back if I'm instructed by the attorney general that it's legal.
I have the power to make a request, but only if the attorney general directs me to. I don't think that's true, Mr. President. I think you can actually, in this regard, like legally, you can actually do that on your own. Yeah, the attorney general is your subordinate. She's below you on the executive branch totem pole.
Legal to do so. But the decision as to whether or not he should come back will be the head of El Salvador. He's a very capable man.
Well, you know, and your attorney general has said the issue is with that word facilitate. Will you seek clarification from the Supreme Court? Do you need to go back to the Supreme Court?
We may do that. I was asking about that. We may do that. There are some people that say, bring him back, put him in trial, and you get him out right away because you see what happened just this morning. Tapes came out, horrible tapes from his wife. You don't get much worse than that. You don't get, I mean, he seems certainly like a very dangerous, very bad person, but even the wife who was so afraid, she was afraid to talk, and all of a sudden tapes got released this morning that were devastating to him.
And this is the point, sir.
What is he referring to? I think he's referring to the fact that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a domestic abuser or has been credibly accused. I think is, judging by what the wife has said. Doesn't really have anything to do with the case.
About due process. The Constitution says every person, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Why not push to have him come back, present all of that evidence in court, let a judge decide?
Well, I'll leave that to the lawyers, and I'll leave that to the Attorney General of the United States,
but
because they're in it. You have to understand, I'm dealing with Russia and Ukraine. I'm dealing
and we're
with
going to talk about that.
I'm dealing with Iran.
Again, I have to like reemphasize, he never talked like this during his first term. The extent to which, how often he says, that's not my job, talk to somebody else about it. Oh, I don't know. I just listen to these other people. These other people tell me. I'm just waiting. I heard from this other person. No, he was way more like, this is me in the first term.
And I'm dealing with Rwanda and Congo, who are fighting, and we're trying to get that one straightened out, and I think we have done that. Did a great job. Nobody even talks about it, but I think we're close to doing that. They're looking like they're going to maybe make a peace deal, which would be good. But I'm dealing with a lot of different things. I don't know much about this gentleman other than I hear he's an absolute not good person. And I have very capable legal people, John Sauer, as you know, and all top people. And I have to rely on that to interpret whatever's said by the Supreme Court. Now, with that being said, I have tremendous respect for the Supreme Court. Look, 3 of the people are people I appointed.
Right.
And I have great respect for the Supreme Court. And I would expect that the Attorney General will be doing the right thing.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It seems.
See? He does it so often, man. He did not talk like this before.
It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth, some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have.
Again, here we are again. But like, in the context of the interview,
I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with
Tom Homan? I saw Tom Homan responded to a question from an interviewer just earlier this morning.
The president says he doesn't know what his responsibilities are under Article 5 of the Constitution. Who would it be who would educate him about that? Would it be you?
I actually really like this question from the interviewer because they're doing what I've suggested in the past more interviewers do, which is start treating Trump like what he is, which is mentally incompetent, you know? Like stop talking about Trump as though he's making decisions. You're giving him too much credit. Like start talking about him like a demented grandpa who's being manipulated by the people around him.
I think the president is one of the, if not the most knowledgeable president that we've ever had. Look, people can beat on President Trump all you want. President Trump's a game changer. I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan.
Do you see how much more sense the way they talk makes when you recognize they're not talking to the public, they're talking to Trump. They're trying to get written into the will. Literally, that's it. They compete for his affection. They talk, they glaze him in the most like absurd, like it's not even about appealing to the voter base. Part of that's because their voter base is already more or less locked in. Part of it's also because I don't think they think there's going to be any more elections. And if there are, they'll be in Moscow with an incomprehensible amount of money by the time any other government takes power.
I'm a border guy. Even President Clinton, Obama took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security if you don't have border security. No one did more than President Trump during his first administration. We handed the Biden administration the most secure border in my lifetime, and he purposely unsecured it. First president in history of the nation to do that. Look at what President Trump achieved in 8 weeks. He did in 8 weeks what Joe Biden couldn't and wouldn't do in 4 years. We have the most secure border in the history of this nation.
You can also kind of see why they're putting Trump up to these interviews rather than any of Trump's officials, because I think a reporter could make Tom Homan bluster. I think they could get him to say some obscene, because even a liar, this is why lying is so difficult, even a very evil person who's willing to lie about anything will trip up, because your mind is still putting effort into keeping consistent answers. You're trying to construct an alternate reality that you're referring to with your lies, which is exhausting. You have to keep it in mind. You have to remember the details. For Trump, it doesn't matter. It's not cognitive. It's effortless. This is Trucy's Lake and Riley quote. For me, the biggest indicator was when Pam Bondi was talking about how Trump saved 200 million Americans from dying to fentanyl-laced Adderall, or no, fentanyl-laced Tylenol. And when she said 200 million, because previously she had said 100 million, but this time at this cabinet meeting, she said 200 million. 258 million. And when she said 258, you know, you could see in the background, J.D. Vance doing a little nod like that with his eyebrows raised. Like, oh, that's what we're going with now. Even to people who are good at lying, it's really difficult to not give it away when you're lying so audaciously about everything. Every part of their psyche, their body, their face wants to betray them to give it away. But not Trump. Not this mother. It's an iron wall. There's nothing to get. He has no idea.
Is El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia to the United States? I don't
know. You'd have to ask the Attorney General that question.
Okay. At least 2 Americans have been mistakenly detained and released by your administration, immigration authorities. Mr. President, should lawful residents of this country start carrying paperwork with them when they leave their homes?
I don't think that'll be necessary, but what you're not saying is that many people have been killed, maimed, badly hurt by illegal immigrants that came over that are from prisons and from jails and from mental institutions, and they're hurting our people. And if we don't get them out, we're not going to have a country for long. We need honest, we need honest media, and we need walls. We need to have borders. And by the way, I built a lot of walls, and if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to have those. You know, we would not be able to have the kind of numbers if I wasn't successful in building hundreds of miles of wall.
Very quickly, sir, the last time you and I spoke in December, you said that you would consider working on getting Dreamers legal status. Dreamers, of course, those who were brought here illegally as children. Where do those efforts stand? Is that a priority for you?
Well, it's not a priority for the Democrats because every time we talk about it, they don't want to talk about it because I guess they like it as a political issue, but they're not good at political issues because they still want to have men
That's true, though. That's true.
playing women's sports.
Well, Republicans do control Congress right now, Mr. President.
the
Are you going
Democrats
to
don't.
make Dreamers a priority?
Well, you need for that, you would need to have support from Democrats, and we have no support from the Democrats.
Have you had any discussions about Dreamers?
Yeah, we've had discussions. We would do something.
See, I think this is another perfect example right here. This right here would be where J.D. Vance would pause and start arguing against the Dreamers. In his head, he would think, okay, Trump has previously talked about, the importance of giving Dreamers like a path to citizenship, but we don't actually want that. So now I'm going to say, well, we need to vet Dreamers to make sure they're not actually, MS-13 or something. Like, he would try to construct an argument. And again, that would be his weakness. I thought Trump was going to do that too. No, because Trump is 5 levels ahead of J.D. Vance in lying because he's not even lying. Trump is like, well, yeah, Democrats don't want it. What? Doesn't matter. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's a flawless net. It's impermeable. There's no way through it. It's so crazy to me people don't think this is also a horrible response. It doesn't matter whether or not the response is horrible. People aren't watching this shit. You think the average Trump supporter's watching an NBC Meet the Press exclusive? What matters is that this doesn't give you, you're not weakening yourself through rationalization. It's actually like really good rhetorical advice if you are a sociopath or if you don't have any moral standards, which is that you have to let go of the part of yourself that checks your lies to see if they're even credible. And once you're past that hill, you have like unlimited power. You're no longer bound by the self-regulation. Now, in practice, that's basically impossible to do unless you're mentally compromised.
I'd love to put in beautiful immigration for everybody, but the Democrats don't want to approve anything. All they want to do is knock out a tax bill. We're trying to get approved right now, the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. And if it doesn't get approved, it's a 68% tax increase, and that's what the Democrats want. They want a 68% tax increase. It's rather incredible.
And I do want to talk to you about your legislation, but let's talk about DOJ very quickly. DOJ has fired and then rehired thousands of federal workers, including FAA employees in charge of aviation safety, specialists working on nuclear weapon safety. What do you say to those who believe Elon Musk's chainsaw approach has jeopardized the safety and security of Americans?
Well, they found $160 billion worth of fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, I think she's done an amazing job.
Somebody earlier asked how much factionalism there is in the White House. Elon was the first and most obvious case of factionalism because he's so unlikable. He, at first, 100% was trying to steer the reins, but because he's stupid and just really bad at playing the game and unlikable and cringe, he's out of the limelight. Maybe he gets replaced by like Jeff Bezos. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there's more competition there down the line, but he's out. He's out of the running. Mike Waltz, by doing something too obviously against Trump's wishes. Trump wants de-escalation in the Middle East, and Mike Waltz wants war for Israel. So he's out. I wonder what the next gap is going to be. I wonder what the next line is going to be. I don't know. They're all such like petty, vindictive little freaks. It's hard to say. In terms of who's most intelligent, like within that group, it's definitely Rubio, Miller, and Leavitt to an extent. I don't think Pam Bondi is that bright. I don't think that Lutnick is that bright. What about the border guy? I think Tom Homan is genuinely just extremely racist. Like, I don't think Tom Homan is like playing this broader, House of Cards ass game to take the reign. I think he wants to be the guy whose job it is to bludgeon immigrant children to death. So in a way, that's a kind of sincerity. What makes you think Leavitt's really dictating policy? I don't know. There's just something about her that makes me think she's ambitious. I don't think she's as good at it as Miller, though. Women are evil. Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
I think his people have done an incredible job. They're brilliant people. They know the computer. I actually asked them, what's their big trait? He said they're unbelievable at computers. In other words, you can't fake them out because these people were, in many cases, crooks. But it was fraud, waste, and abuse. They found, your question should be asked a different way. Were certain things found? Yes. How much? $160 billion. Think of what $160 billion is. He found 160.
He said he'd find $2 trillion.
Well, we're not finished yet. We're not finished yet.
Do you think the work continues even though he's leaving? He said
sure, he's leaving behind some very brilliant people. They were on television last night. They're super high IQ people. I like high IQ people. The Democrats don't have many of them.
Let me ask you about some news that broke. You are threatening to rescind Harvard's tax-exempt status.
Yeah.
And yet directing the IRS to investigate and rescind a university's tax-exempt status is contrary to what's in the federal law. The law says you can't do this. Do you think you're following the law?
Well, I tell you, I'm going to just follow what the lawyers say. They say that we're allowed.
Dude, do you think you're following the law? Oh, I'm just doing what I'm told. Incredible. Like, again, like it's the place your brain has to be at to respond in this way to a question like that. Yeah, you're not supposed to say that out loud, Mr. President.
Allowed to do that, and I'm all for it. But everything I say is subject to the laws being 100% adhered to.
Are you willing to take this to court if it becomes a court fight? You're going to take it that far?
We've won a lot of cases.
All right, let's talk about some of the other actions you've taken over the past 100 days. Last month, you directed your Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to review 2 people who you perceive to be your political adversaries. And yet you told me in December that you would not direct the Justice Department to investigate your political foes.
I think his handlers don't care anymore because it doesn't seem to matter what he says. It is one, if there's one thing that we can agree on, it's this. The people right now running the White House do not think there's going to be another election. Or at the very least, that it won't be a fair one. They're definitely running things that way. They are not acting like they're gonna, the tariffs, they are not legislating or running the way they would if they thought they had to care about public opinion.
What changed?
Well, no, I just look at people, and I'm not directing anybody. They looked at these 2 people. They might have known it, or they might have heard it from 2 years ago. One person said, he knew me so well. He was, I think, on CNN or MSDNC, but they're both failing networks. You're happy to know, even though one of them, I guess, is related to you in one form or another, although they're trying to cut him loose as fast as possible. But it's
effortless. No one does this except by instinct. No one does it that well. I mean it. I mean it. He synthesizes these bits so perfectly. He's not thinking about them. I know that because when I'm at my funniest on stream, I'm not thinking about the jokes that I'm telling for the most part. You're stringing together like a chain of like impulsive statements and like threading them into a rhyme. It's not like you're not thinking. Yeah, you're flying by the seat of your hippocampus. Exactly. It
was well known that this one person, it was almost like he was my brother. I don't even know who he is. Maybe he was there. Maybe he was in the Oval Office a few times as a surrogate for, somebody in some form of government, along with 25 other people that sat in the back of the room or stood in the back of the room. I have no idea who this guy is. And he's out there. And then he did a book called Anonymous. I think that's really subversion. I think it's spying. It's something really bad.
But you passed an executive order calling for your Attorney General to investigate that.
For a long time. And the other one said that the election was so wonderful. It was such a, well, it turned out it wasn't a wonderful election. It was a corrupt election.
Let me ask it this way, sir, because when we talked in December, I asked you, what is your message to people who didn't vote for you? Let me remind you of what you said. You said, I love you, and we're going to all work together. How does pursuing your political foes help to unify?
Did I really say I love you?
You really did. That's a direct quote.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right, but I'd like to see.
I promise I'll show it to you. I'll show you the tape.
Look.
How does that help to unify the country?
I want to treat people fairly, whether they voted for me or not. I want to have a unified country. It's very hard because the media is so fake, including, like even the way you ask questions. Every question is asked in a negative vein. There's a toy company that took a toddler's, whatever, but you don't talk about the fact that
well, man.
Gasoline is down at numbers that nobody believes possible. You know why they're down, by the way? Drill, baby, drill. We're drilling like crazy right now.
We try to make sure every question is fair, Mr. President.
Look, every question you ask says a very negative slant.
No, but look, I'm just curious.
And I'm fine for responding to you. I don't think you're very difficult at all to respond to be honest with you. But you know what? You should ask some positive things like, sir, it's amazing what you've done with gasoline. Because you know what? Gasoline's big business. A stroller is not big business.
To this question, Mr. President, you said you wanted to unify the country. Does going after political foes undercut that goal?
No, not at all. No, we want honest people.
Okay.
I think you have to do that. We want honest people in this country.
Let me ask you big picture. People who have lived in countries like the Philippines, Hungary, Russia, they look at some of your actions going after civil service, going after universities, law firms, the media. They say it's out of an authoritarian playbook. What do you say to those who believe you are taking the country down an authoritarian path?
Well, there you go again. Why don't you ask it a different way? Many people wanted to come into our country. Many people love Trump. I won the election. They didn't win the election. I got a lot more votes than they did. I won the popular vote. I won all 7 swing states by a lot. A lot of people were surprised. I said, I think you could win 4, maybe 5. No, I won all 7, and I won by a lot. And I won, actually, I think there was a lot of hanky-panky going on, but it was too big to rig. That's the good news. It's too big to rig. But let me just say, so when you make these statements about, people say this, people, well, you know, they had their chance at the election and they lost big. So you should ask the question differently. You should say, what about the people that want to be in this country? What about the people that love this country?
But what do you say? I'm asking it on behalf of those people to give you a chance to respond to them. What do you say to those people, sir?
Those people are going to be very happy. They're going to have to see some results. And I think
nobody else could do what Trump is doing successfully, right? That is probably true. Yeah, I don't think anyone else in the administration could respond this way. In a way, he really is like their strongest soldier, even without really understanding why. I also think that to an extent, Trump is telling the truth when he says that he wants the best for all the country, even the people who didn't vote for him. Like, he obviously prefers it when people vote for him, and he thinks that everyone who's ever spoken against him in any way is a loser or a liar or a hypocrite or whatever else, and he's never had a single bit of good word. He's never said a good thing about anyone who's criticized him. But I think he does believe that. Yeah, he's telling his truth, exactly. I don't know. Come on, no way he isn't spiteful. Oh no, he's spiteful, but you ever like met a narcissist, or as many of you have claimed you've met a narcissist, but actually just read a thread or two from /raised by narcissists on Reddit, and then since then you've acted like you're an expert on the subject of narcissism? Well, as somebody who's read more than 1 or 2 threads on r/raised by narcissists, because that subreddit is a constant train wreck, the feeling that I get from him is like, the spite is baked into his desire to make America good. Like, he wants an I told you so. You know what I mean? Like, look, everyone's always lying about me. Everyone's always cheating. Everyone's always trying to, like, put me down. Everyone's always so dishonest and rude to me. But hey, everyone, don't you worry. Even if you hate me, I'm gonna show you. Yeah, I don't think he's trying to help people. I think he wants to prove that he's right. Which, I mean, obviously he's not, so no getting around that. You get me, right? I don't know. Just a fascinating figure psychologically. So much is going to be written about him, but in order for the really good stuff to be written about him, we have to move beyond the low-level liberal critiques, which is that he's evil or sociopathic. I don't really think he's sociopathic. I think he's megalomaniacal and narcissistic. He's evil in outcome, but that's not interesting. You got to talk about the really like gruesome stuff in there, because to me, the idea that Trump is evil, okay, so there are evil presidents, great. This is something much nastier. If you want to have an evil president off, Trump's not more evil than Andrew Jackson. He's not. He's just not. But if you want to have like a more interesting conversation about what he represents, like as a leader, like what he is and what he is in relationship to his administration, that is unique. Only one in history to have done it. That's what I want to see.
We had a great 100 days. There are a lot of people that say it was unprecedented. It was an absolutely unprecedented 100 days. And I hope that they're going to be right.
Do you see dissent as an essential part of democracy?
It's a part of democracy. It is.
See, again, Vance right here would say some bullshit like, Of course, we value people and their right to critique our administration. However, it's the dishonest left news media. It's oh my God, he's so funny.
An important part of democracy.
Yeah, you're always going to have, Kristen, you're always going to have dissent. There's nothing you're going to do about that. Am I going to get 100% unified? It would be a strange place. I can't even imagine it where 100%. Look, you have people that are good people.
Doesn't have the
They're
Assadist
very smart
sauce.
people, and they honestly believe we should have open borders and the entire world should be allowed to pour into our country. I think it's a 95-5 issue, but they believe it. They're not even bad people. Some of them are bad. You have people that honestly believe that men should be allowed to play in women's sports. Some of these people, I don't know any. I haven't been able to find any, but they exist. They say it's an 80-20 issue. I don't believe that. I think it's a 97-3 issue.
Do you think people should have the right to criticize you without fear of reprisal?
Absolutely, yeah, I do. That I do.
And how do you square
And I
that?
think that happens.
How do you square that with the fact that you have passed these executive orders asking the Attorney General to look into some of the people who've criticized you, who've been harshest against you?
I have been investigated more than any person in the history of the United States of America. I've been investigated more than the late, great, as I say at my rallies, Alphonse Capone. Alphonse Capone was a nasty man. He was the highest level gangster. And I have been investigated more than Al Capone, more than anybody. These people are evil people, and I won. And I'll tell you what, all I want to happen is for the Department of Justice and the FBI. Pam is great and Cash is great. I think they're two great people, but they're their own people. They want to do a fantastic job.
Hasn't Kash Patel like not been showing up to work? Or was that only for his when he was made the like interim head of a different department? What was the other department that he stopped showing up to?
And all I want to do and all I want to ask for is that they be allowed to do their job. I'm not telling them to do anything, and I believe I have the right to do it. I'm, in theory, the top law enforcement officer as the president. We went over this once before, and it turned out I was right. But I'm not looking to use that. We have two great people, and we have many, many incredible people under them, and I just want them to do their job and do it well.
Let me ask you about something I don't think you've been asked much about, which is you've branded your own cryptocurrency. The coin's values actually surged recently after you announced that top holders would be invited to have dinner.
I don't even know that. What did it surge to?
What did it surge to?
Yeah, what's it worth? You might as well tell me, because I have no idea.
Well, it surged. It surged. I will find it. Hold on one second. 5.2 or 58%. So 58%.
To what number?
That's not bad. 14.32.
What?
No, dollars per cryptocurrency.
$1 billion?
No.
What's the number? I mean, what is the
He doesn't know what a crypto coin is. I'm sure you know that, but it's worth understanding. He doesn't.
amount?
The meme coin's value hit a peak of 75.35 on January 19th.
That doesn't mean anything.
And that's before your inauguration, and then it surged.
Look, I'm in favor of crypto.
Let me just ask you.
Incredible. Also worth noting, by the way, but I'm sure this is already like generally understood, that Trump isn't the one minting the meme coin. Obviously. The whole thing is being facilitated, but that's always the case with crypto. It's being facilitated by other people. Other people are profiting. I don't know if he's getting a cut. It doesn't really matter. They're just trying to enrich themselves by saying you get access to Trump if you buy into it. He doesn't know. So it's possible he's not even profiting from it. He has so much more than money. Who cares? You know, like the money matters to other. He's ancient and already wealthy and has infinite power. The other people, his children, other members of the cabinet, they've got a long life ahead of them. I don't know if he's profiting from it. I doubt he is.
What do you say to those who argue that when they hear that, they worry you're profiting from the presidency?
I'm not profiting from anything. All I'm doing is, I started this long before the election. I want crypto. I think crypto is important because if we don't do it, China's going to. And it's new. It's very popular. It's very hot.
See, he thinks that crypto is like AI. He thinks that crypto is a technology that you invest into. Like if we don't do crypto, China will get to it first or something.
If you look at the market, when the market went down, that stayed much stronger than other aspects of the market. But I want crypto because a lot of people, millions of people want it. I don't know if you know that Biden went after it violently, and then before the election, he changed his tune entirely. His head of the SEC, everybody changed their tune. You know why? Because there were hundreds of millions of people that are participating in crypto, and they wanted to get their votes.
So you're not profiting off of the cryptocurrency?
I haven't even
at all?
looked.
Has your family?
I'll tell you what, look.
I believe him completely.
If I own stock in something and I do a good job and the stock market goes up, I guess I'm profiting. But who really profits is somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who uses inside information. She worked for $175,000 a year, and that's at the high end, and she's worth $150, $200 million. Okay? You ought to look at Nancy Pelosi, and you ought to look at some of these politicians that are stone cold crooks. I was very wealthy when I came in. Being president, I probably...
Yeah, unfortunately, he's completely correct on this one. Like, if your moral qualm is with insider trading, it is basically ubiquitous in Congress. Almost every congressperson does it or tries to do it. Obviously, depends on how close they are to the information, whether they're led into the right circles. It is true. That's like a general, they're just more blatant with it now.
Costs me money if you really look. In fact, I do something that no other president has done. They think maybe George Washington has done. I contribute my entire salary to the government, back to the government.
Like $300,000 a
Do you
year.
contribute anything you earn from crypto back to the government? If that
I
happens?
never thought of that. I mean, should I contribute all of my real estate that I've owned for many years if it goes up a little bit because I'm president and doing a good job? I don't think so.
Okay.
But
Well, that is what every other president has done. It's called divesting before your presidency. You are the one president who didn't do it, but,
I've done something that surprisingly, they say nobody else has done, no other president has done. And it's a substantial salary. It's like $500,000 a year or $550,000 a year, 4 years, a couple of $1 million. I gave it to the government last time. I never got a story saying I gave it. Nobody cared if I gave it. I guarantee if I didn't give it, there'd be a big story. But no other president, they say, with the possible exception of George Washington, and they haven't been able to find those records. And we've had wealthy presidents before, but no other president has contributed the salary. And they told me before this that you will probably be asking me whether or not I'm going to contribute my salary again, but you haven't asked that.
Are you going to?
Yes.
You are? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I appreciate we just made news there. Let's talk about foreign policy, sir.
Yeah.
You just signed a minerals deal with Ukraine. It's a sign, it seems, that the United States is invested in Ukraine's future. The Secretary of State told me this is a very critical week. Are you any closer to reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia?
I hope so.
How would you characterize
I do believe we're closer with one party and maybe not as close with the other, but we'll have to see. I'd like to not say which one we're closer to, but we did do a deal for the American people that was good. We were able to get rare earth. The Europeans are getting paid back. They have a loan. We didn't. Biden just gave them $350 billion. He has no idea where the money is, what happened. And
we did have returns and guarantees for the assistance we provided in a lot of cases. But again,
at least we'll, in one form or another, get our... I don't feel so foolish. And remember this is Biden's war. This was a war that was never going to happen if I were president. This is a horrible, horrible war. And I get to see shots of soldiers through, satellite that are just so terrible. 5,000 soldiers are being... Look, 5,000 soldiers a week.
Who do you think was the person who showed him the collage of grainy drone footage of soldiers dying to try to convince him to press Ukraine into ceding territory to Russia? Elon? It could have been Elon. I don't actually think it was Tulsi Gabbard. I think that Tulsi Gabbard's been playing it pretty quiet. Tulsi Gabbard actually has not done or said much. She has not engaged on much. I mean, obviously, running national intelligence, it's not the most press-friendly job out there, but Vance and Miller for sure, probably.
On average are dying. They're not American soldiers, but I want to solve the problem. They're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers. And if I can save 5,000 souls,
Tulsi's aiming to be air. Dude, Tulsi's literally just trying to get the bag, okay? Tulsi's a foreign agent and a grifter, but she's like not really on the level the rest of the administration is on, I think. I think she's mostly just like she, after leaving Congress, was happy with a Fox News deal. You know, she had like a little fun run for the presidency back in 2020. Now she fucking leads national intelligence. She has no qualifications for the job at all. She's just sitting there at the desk going like, man, I hope I can leverage this into a solid long-term income after I'm done, you know? Like, yeah, she had a podcast. I don't think she has ambitions to run the country or anything like that. I think she's literally just like, holy shit, I bluffed my way into national intelligence. I'm gonna chill here and try not to break anything. That would be what I would do in her position, personally.
I just love doing it.
How long do you give both countries before you're going to walk away?
Well, there'll be a time when I will say, okay, keep going, keep being stupid.
When does
keep
that
fighting.
come? Are you close to it?
Sometimes I get close to it and then positive things happen, okay? So I hope it gets done.
Your close ally, Senator Lindsey Graham, has a sanctions bill against Russia. If you get to that point, Mr. President, where you're prepared to walk away, will you sign that sanctions bill?
Well, it depends on whether or not Russia is behaving toward coming to a peace. We want a peace deal. We want Russia and Ukraine to agree to a deal. We think we're fairly close, and we're going to save a lot of people from being killed. We save a lot of money, too, because we're spending money like, you know, Europe is spending a third of the money that we're spending, and it's more important for Europe than it is for us. Biden had no control. He just sent money over there willy-nilly. Nobody had any idea what was happening, why they were doing it, why they were sending it, and it was massive amounts of money.
So you think you're close to a deal? What will Russia have to give up? Because Ukraine, there's been discussions they will have to give up some of the land.
Russia will have to give up all of Ukraine because that's what they want.
All of it? Do you mean like they have to give up on their ambition to control all of it, or do you mean they'll have to give up all of Ukraine?
All of Ukraine, meaning they wouldn't keep any of the land that they've claimed?
Russia would have to give up all of Ukraine because what Russia wants is all of Ukraine.
Okay, I think what Trump means here is that Russia would be compromising in the sense that they wouldn't get to continue to take territory. Not they would have to give up Crimea and the Donbass. He's just a idiot, I think. Yeah, well, yes.
And if I didn't get involved, they would be fighting right now for all of Ukraine. Russia doesn't want the strip that they have now. Russia wants all of Ukraine. And if it weren't me, they would keep going. Do you know that the European Union leaders have asked me to call Putin so many times because he doesn't return their phone call?
You posted on social media he might be tapping you along.
Might be.
Did you misread
But you might
him?
be tapping me along, too, when
He's still got it. He's still got it.
you tell me how nice an interview this is going to be. So.
Did you?
Dude, he's still got it. What the? Dementia is crazy. How does it leave some parts of your brain intact and other parts it like ravages? It's insane. There are some social skills that he has that he's in like the 99th percentile, like the ability to just seamlessly like dip into these bits of flattery and counter flattery and response and like flirting, kind of, not really flirting, you know what I mean, like that. Most people couldn't do that, but he doesn't know what trade is. He doesn't understand what trade is, and he doesn't know who pays tariffs. It's incredible.
You know, I'm used to being tapped along.
Did you in any?
Is that not sexual harassment? No, that's not sexual harassment. And you don't need to go manufacturing claims of sexual harassment against Trump. He's given us plenty to chew on his own.
Way misread Vladimir Putin?
Did I what?
Misread him, now that you're saying that.
Well, I'll tell you about that in a month from now or 2 weeks from now. I have no idea. I can tell you this. His ambition was stopped to a large extent when he saw that it was me that was now leading the charge, because he wasn't dealing with anybody in Europe. He wasn't calling him back. Do you know that I asked him, I said, did Biden ever call you in 3 years? Did Biden ever call? He said he never called. Do you know Biden didn't call him one time? And all these thousands of soldiers, hundreds, millions of soldiers are dying. And people, not only soldiers, people dying in the cities and the towns, and the whole heritage of that country is being blown apart. I mean, the country's heritage is being blown apart. You know, the steeples, those beautiful spires that you see, you know, the most beautiful in the world? Yeah. Almost 95% of them are laying in smithereens, all broken up and so sad, laying all over the ground because they were shot. It's really a bad situation. And he didn't get one phone call from Biden. The war would have never started. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't start. I was there for 4 years. It was the apple of his eye. This was the apple of Putin's eye. There was no chance he would have gone in.
What's the red line for you? At what point do you say, that's it, we're walking away?
Well, you'll know. I mean, there'll be a time when I may say that. And if I do, there may be something I can't, maybe it's not possible to do. There's tremendous hatred, just so you understand. Kristen, we're talking tremendous hatred between these two men and between, you know, some of the soldiers, frankly, between the generals. They've been fighting hard for 3 years. I think we have a very good chance of doing it.
Very quickly, if you do walk away,
It is interesting how a lot of his more severe rhetoric against Zelensky has completely disappeared since the disastrous Oval Office conversation. Before that conversation, and immediately after it, Trump would talk about how he was a dictator, a pretender, a liar, a thief. Calling him like the narrative from Trump against Zelensky was extremely condemnatory. Right? Like very, very, very aggressive. And a little after that Oval Office interview, it just stopped. And Trump has gone back to language that was more common to him a year ago, which is he's just talking about how the war is a tragedy and it needs to end. I think after Putin spurned him, his mood changed to an extent, but I wonder if he was embarrassed by proxy of what J.D. Vance did during that Oval Office conversation. Like, J.D. Vance, obviously, again, f***ed up, and took the attention away from Trump, which Trump hates, and made himself the center of discussion with a stupid question. Have you even said thank you? Which sounds pathetic, because it is pathetic. And also he'd said thank you a million times. It was so pathetic that after Zelensky left that interview, he made a point of tweeting thank yous to like every other world leader, basically. Like, J.D. Vance was pathetic enough that Zelensky felt comfortable mocking him after the interview, but not Trump. Zelensky didn't really talk much about Trump after that, to be honest. And I wonder if the embarrassment that J.D. Vance caused was enough to both A, kind of distance Trump from him a little bit, and B, make Trump soften a bit on Zelensky, soften the rhetoric. It's all very psychological and psychosocial, isn't it? It actually has very little to do with politics, at least in the traditional sense. Well, it has more to do with office politics than it does politics. We're not debating ideas here. We're talking about like how to navigate this unique social environment. I don't know.
That mean that you would pull military and intelligence?
I don't want to say that now. It's too early to say that. I don't want to get into that argument.
Let's move on to Canada. You have long talked about making Canada the 51st state. There's obviously a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who you spoke to after his victory. He says that you didn't talk to him in that call about making Canada a 51st state.
No, he called me. He was very nice, and I congratulated him. He had a victory. It's a very close victory. It's there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state?
He wants to come and see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environmental lunatics. We don't need anything.
The national forests, yeah. Oh, man. Don't we need their energy? Yeah, we need their energy and their forests and the cars that are made there, because there are cars, yeah. Yeah.
That they have. We're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau, I said, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada? If Canada was a state, It wouldn't cost us. It would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state. And if you look at our map, if you look at the geography, I'm a real estate guy at heart. When I look down at that without that artificial line that was drawn with a ruler many years ago, it was just an artificial line, goes straight across. You don't even realize what a beautiful country it would be. It would be great. But I don't think the American public wants me to pay $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. Again, remember this.
Yeah.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need...
Again, to be clear, what he's saying is that we buy that much stuff from Canada. We're getting it in exchange for stuff.
Anything. We do very little business with Canada. They do all of their business practically with us.
You and I,
they need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not
I think it's...
Which again, like, begs the question, who has told Trump that we need Greenland that badly? You know, again, like, that's what I'm curious about, because that's what I want to know for all of it now. Like, every time he says anything, I want to know, like, who gave him that information. Miller, I don't know if that would be Miller or Vance. That to me feels more like I mean, we know Teal, Elon, maybe Vance is a Teal proxy, I guess. I want to know what that dynamic is, because again, none of these ideas, he doesn't, the only ideas that we know he's had for himself, you can tell when they're his ideas. Tariffs are a big one, right? The oligarchy could have orchestrated a recession in a variety of ways. Trump just has an obsession with tariffs personally. Yeah, he was obsessed with buying Greenland during his first term. I wonder if the obsession with buying Greenland is also a Trump special, and the difference is like this time there are just people around him telling him, yeah, that's a great idea.
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay, but you don't rule it out for Greenland.
And by the way, Canada, they spend less money on military than practically any nation in the world. They pay NATO less than any nation. They think we're subsidized. They think we are going to protect them. And really, we are. But the truth is, they don't carry their full share, and it's unfair to the United States and our taxpayers.
But you are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out. I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish them and all of that. But we need that for international security. Do you know, we have Russian boats and we have Chinese boats, gunships all over the place, aircraft carriers, gunships, going up and down the coast of Greenland. We need that to be protected. Internationally, we need it.
So you are willing to send U.S. troops to claim a sovereign territory?
I didn't say that. You asked me a question. Would you? Is there a circumstance? It could happen. I doubt it will, but it certainly could happen with respect to Greenland.
Okay, let me ask you about Iran. Your administration has had conversations with Iran. Is the goal of these talks limiting Iran's nuclear program or total dismantlement?
Total dismantlement.
That's all you'll accept?
That's all I'd accept. Now, there's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity and to, but I say, you know, they have so much oil, what do they need it for? But, you know, I've seen it with other states where they're looking to do something and they have a lot of oil. Iran has tremendous energy. You know, I put sanctions, if you know that. I put pretty strong sanctions on 2 days ago on the oil. The sad part is that if Biden didn't get involved, if we had a competent president, you would have never had the attack on Israel. October 7th would have never taken place. Hamas would have had no money because Iran was broke. And now, in a period of 4 years during the Biden administration, they became very rich. They have over $300 billion cash in the bank. And they had no money. They were ready to make a deal with me. And it's very sad. Because of this rigged election, they didn't do it. Just another thing you can mark down to a bad election.
It's interesting what you're saying, though, because Secretary Rubio has said that he would accept, or the idea is there is an openness to accepting peaceful civil nuclear program.
Well, that's what people, I didn't say anything contradictory. I said that people are talking about that, and this is something that's really pretty new in the dialogue. And I'd have to be, you know, my inclination is to say, what do you need that for? You have a lot of oil.
So you want total dismantlement, bottom line?
I think that I would be open to hearing it. You know, civilian energy, it's called. But, you know, civilian energy often leads to military wars. And we don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple deal. I want Iran to be really successful, really great, really fantastic. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon.
Okay.
This is like okay. I'm not just trying to be edgy and contrarian. This is actually an element of Trump that is authentically more anti-Zionist than what Biden represented. In concept, Biden was ideologically Zionist. Trump obviously does not care at all. He just wants to be the big guy with the big deals. So it is very funny that Trump is willing to say something like, I want to make Iran a great country, they just can't have nukes. Because I gotta say, historically, Democrat presidents would not be willing to say that. Now, I don't have an encyclopedic memory of every statement Biden and Obama and so on made about Iran, but for the most part, they were not. The most they would say is stuff like, you know, the Iranian people suffer under the regime, which is true. It's just like, and especially with Biden as well, because, you know, obviously, like, Iran funds all of these terrorist proxy groups that fight against Israel, right? And when Biden referred to Iran, you know, that was the context in which they were referred to. Trump just straight up says, yeah, I want them to be great, they just can't have nukes. Israel doesn't like that. Israel does not want Iran to be great. The threat of Iran having nukes is just the excuse that Israel uses to justify their antagonism against them. In reality, of course, Iran is legitimately an enemy of Israel. Like, they fund Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, you know, whatever. Israel actually has a fairly legitimate beef with Iran, and vice versa. So for Trump to say this, it's just funny, you know? Mike Waltz, you know, cursing from his little UN office or whatever.
They want to be successful, that's okay. I want them to be so successful. And, you know, the Iranian people are incredible. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon because the world will be destroyed.
Just to recap, we're talking about your desire to claim Canada, Greenland. What do you say to people?
You forgot the Panama Canal.
Panama Canal.
I'm so glad we sat through this whole thing, man. Holy shit. He gets funnier the more he ages.
What do you say to people who say they voted for you because they wanted you to end foreign conflicts, not start new?
I don't see that as conflict. I think that's good for our country, those things. Look, the Panama Canal was taken over by China, effectively. Now China seems to have left. But the Panama Canal, think of this deal. We built the most expensive object we've ever built in the history of our country.
This is another one I want to know where he got it from, because as far as I can tell, literally nobody benefits from this, right? Like, no, like America doesn't benefit. There aren't any oligarchs who benefit. Who benefits from us, like, threatening Panama? We already have full access to the canal. Like, I want to know who gave him this idea. That
was Mount McKinley. They just took away. I just gave him back the name. But McKinley made the money. Teddy Roosevelt spent the money. McKinley gets very little credit, you know, but he made, you know how he made the money? Through tariffs. He was the big tariff president. Okay, but forget that. We built the Panama Canal. It was the most expensive thing. It would be the equivalent, like almost $2 trillion today. We've never spent it. And it was very successful. And Jimmy Carter gave it away for $1.
Panama insists Panama says they do control the canal, but we have a couple more questions left, and
Panama said what?
A little wrap.
Panama said what?
Panama says they still control it. I know you're saying China. Panama says they still control it.
You know, but if you would have gone there about 5.2 months ago,
yeah,
every single
5.2 months ago. Okay, please spit your shit, King.
Sign on the Panama Canal, with the exception of about 15% of them, was in Chinese.
Yeah. Let me ask you, because we're nearing the end, just a couple more questions.
I wonder if that was it. I wonder if he just got shown a photo of there being like a few signs in Chinese at the Panama Canal. That might have actually been it. Like, obviously Chinese ships go through it all the time. American ships don't need to go through it as much because we're America. We control both coasts. We can deploy, we can ship stuff out from either side of our country, which means that we have the ability to bypass the canal. If China wants to send stuff over to Europe, I don't know why I'm talking about this.
Questions here.
I'm not complaining. You keep saying to me like I'm rushing.
No, you're not, and I really appreciate it.
I don't want to
really
rush you. I don't want to make you nervous.
Thank you. The Trump Organization is selling hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
Are you seriously considering a third term? Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that.
I believe
but it's
it.
something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican, to carry it forward.
Zigabis, why are you pretending that I don't know that Obama signed the nuclear accords with Iran? I know that. What I'm talking about is that in this current political environment, Trump saying flatly, I want Iran to be great, I want them to be a great nation, they just can't have nukes, is unironically way less measured of a statement with regard to the broader Zionist conversation than anything Biden was able to say. You know? If Biden made a comment like that, everyone would have dogpiled on him. By the way, Democrats, Republicans, everyone. Trump can do whatever he wants, of course, because he's Trump. But that's like a level of... It's a statement that one would only make if they were not heavily influenced by AIPAC, basically. Like, if you're a politician and like every week or so there's a rep from AIPAC who's like, hey, listen, what's up? Here's the list of mandated talking points this week or whatever, you know, go for it. I don't know. We're going to pay you for your next campaign. Like that you're not going to say shit like that. But Trump's not getting paid by AIPAC. He's not a fucking... Well, maybe he is. I don't know. I haven't checked the numbers. He probably is. But he's not listening to them. He's not listening to AIPAC. He doesn't listen to anyone.
But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
The Constitution does prohibit it. Some of your allies are pretty serious about this, though, Mr. President. I've spoken to them. They say they are coming up with potential ways.
Well,
obviously, the biggest one will be a constitutional amendment.
That's because they like the job I'm doing, and it's a compliment. It's really a great compliment.
Has anyone...
I do also believe Trump when he says that he doesn't expect to run for a 3rd term. I think that from his perspective, it's epic trolling. I think that for a lot of people in his administration, they like it because it erodes our democracy. Like, people like Miller like it because they love flexing the fact that nothing matters anymore and they can do what they want. Trump, personally, I don't think he's just that ideologically invested. He might not make it through the term. Again, he's quite old and he's obviously not all there, so, you know.
Approached you, though, with an actual plan, a way to actually start the process
Well, there are
of a
ways of doing it.
constitutional amendment?
There are ways of doing it, and you know the same thing. And if you look at the vice presidential thing and you hear different concepts and different other people say you can have a write-in vote, there's lots of different things. With all of that being said, I want to be a great president.
See, somebody had a conversation with him. Somebody was like, yeah, see, here's all the ways you could legally be a president for another term. And I bet you Trump said, nah, and walked off. I'm telling you, man, 90% chance that's what happened. Some little Hitlerite, some fascist, some weasel in the administration, could have been Miller Vance, I don't know, was like, oh, I'm not saying you should run for a 3rd term, Mr. President, but here's the way you could do it. And then they lied to him and they said, oh, you know, here are some methods. And Trump just, I do think that. So now Trump gets to brag that everyone wants him for a 3rd term, but he's not, you know.
I will have served. Hopefully, everything will go well. I feel very good. I just did a physical...
You think he just wants to make his money go back to golfing? I don't think it's about money at all for him. I think lots of people are making money off of him, for sure, and it's about the money for them. I just think he likes the applause. It's 100% about ego, for sure, and golfing. He does like golfing.
So I took, unlike all other presidents, I took cognitive tests and I aced it. I got 100% correct. And one doctor said, there were numerous doctors watching. And he said, I've never seen that before. Biden didn't take a cognitive. He couldn't have gotten the first question right. But I came out great with the physical, both physically and mentally. And I just want to serve, do a great job. I'll be an 8-year president. I'll be a 2-term president. I always thought that was very important, to be honest with you. You know, if you look at President Polk, he was a 1-termer, and he did some great things, actually. Pretty good president.
Don't know much about Polk.
And I'm not saying you can't do that, but there's something about being a 2-term president that was very important to me.
And just to put a button on it, has anyone in an official capacity presented you with, sir, here are some ideas by which you could actually get a constitutional
Well,
amendment.
This is a good question. This is a good question, because then the question is, are there people in your administration who are actually trying to get you to do it? Which is,
capacity of being a big supporter of many people have said different things, but
Okay.
I'm not looking at that.
You haven't had official meetings about it.
No, and just so you said, 4 years is a long time. I have almost 4 years. All of these things that we.
somebody talked to him about it. I don't think it was an official meeting. Somebody talked to him about it. If he had an official meeting about it, then he would just say so, which is why they don't want to have an official meeting about it.
We've done more than any president, and even you might admit that. Nobody's done the extent of the things that we've done. Nobody's done this in essentially a little bit more than 3 months. As they say, 100 days. I'm looking to do a great job as president and set the country on the right track, because if I didn't win, this country would have failed. We would have been a failed nation.
You have built a political movement that has transformed the Republican
Greatest in
Party.
history.
It's transformed the country,
The
quite
greatest
frankly.
political movement in history, MAGA.
When
Make
you
America great again.
When
Thank you.
look to the future, Mr. President, do you think the MAGA movement can survive without you as its leader?
Yes, I do.
What gives you?
I think it's so strong, and I think we have tremendous people. I think we have a tremendous group of people. We talked about a number of them. You look at
He's probably not wrong, in the sense that the movement will survive his passing. The question is, will anyone be able to represent it? So whether you guys like it or not, Trumpism or MAGAism is a distinct ideology that overlaps with conservatism and with fascism, but is best described as its own. There are many fascist governments. There are many conservative governments. There is one Trumpist movement, MAGA movement, whatever you want to call it. The question is, will they be able to consolidate and build even after he's gone? And I don't know. I don't know. But to be clear, the history books will refer to this period of time and this movement distinctly. There is no doubt about that. It's not about a coherent ideology. I mean, what is Peronism, right? It's about describing an era. And he is the era. It ain't the Biden era. How much will it survive him? How long will it persist? I don't know. I mean, no one does, right? It's just interesting.
Marco, you look at J.D. Vance, who's fantastic. You look at, I could name 10, 15, 20 people right now just sitting here. No, I think we have a tremendous party. And you know what I can't name? I can't name one Democrat. I mean, I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray. They have a new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. And
that right there, that's also straight off. That we are so back. That's straight off the Trump dome right there. Sees a black woman talking, low IQ. It's right up here. Phenomenal, really. He's not wrong about the Democrats not having anyone, about them being in disarray, though. That is true. That is completely true. He wants to drop the N-word so bad. Maybe he'd get $500,000 in GoFundMe afterwards. I don't know. He probably would. More than $500,000. Without Trump, the GOP will be in the same boat. Well, no, because the neocons are dead. Like the RNC, the actual organization of the Republicans, their actual bureaucracy has been taken over by Trumpists. I mean, literal members of Trump's family. So it's not like they're going to default back to some shambling neocon nothing party afterwards. They're going to be, it's going to be guys, it's going to be a bloodbath. Every one of these freak grifters is going to tear each other to shreds, trying to be the one who inherits the power and everything that it implies. None of them have demonstrated the prescience and the discipline necessary to reel the organization back in after their one cohesive leader has gone. And mind you, I'm not saying that they're going to lose. I'm just saying that the power vacuum is going to be a spectacle to watch.
they said, she's the future of the party. I said, you have to be kidding. I don't know what they're going to do. And I really believe in a two-party system. Because it's good to be challenged. It's really good to have a two-party. You know, it's good. Being challenged is okay. It keeps you sharp. I don't know what they're going to do. They have nobody. Bernie's 87 years old or something. And, you know, Biden is the worst thing that ever happened to old people. Because...
Holy Holy shit, dude. Oh my god. How does he keep dropping bangers time after time after time? Fuck me, man.
He was grossly incompetent, and I think maybe for artificial reasons. You know, he had operations and things, so maybe that's an artificial. But I know people that are unbelievably sharp, and they're older than 87. But I watch Bernie Sanders. He's a nut job, but he's still sharp. He's sharp as he's the same guy he was. He hasn't gone down. But Biden is really, he's the worst thing to happen to old people.
I know that you
it does make sense that Trump would be personally offended that Biden's obvious senility has drawn more attention to Trump's age. You know what I mean? Like, Trump's probably looking at Biden going, see, I'm that old and I'm not that bad, even though mentally he's probably a lot worse.
are only 100 days in. But as we sit here today, who do you see as your successor, Mr. President?
Well, it's far too early to say that. But, I do have a vice president, and typically it would be, and JD's doing a fantastic job.
He would be at the top of the list?
It could very well be. I don't want to get involved in that. I think he's a fantastic, brilliant guy. Marco is great. There's a lot of them that are great. I also see tremendous unity. But certainly you would say that somebody's the VP. If that person is outstanding, I guess that person would have an advantage. But I think the other people would all stay in unbelievably high positions. But, it could be that he'd be challenged by somebody. We have a lot of good people in this party.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news.
That was remarkable. I think this is the best interview so far from Trump. And I don't just mean since his presidency. I mean, like, it was cinema. Trump is literally making the bloodbath worse by not picking a clear successor. Yeah, you're not wrong. He's exacerbating the problem. He probably relishes it. Yeah, to an extent. He probably does see all the infighting from his cabinet, trying to vie for his affection and approval, and he does fight. Like, is that not the classic dying grandpa thing, to kind of play them off each other a little bit? I don't know. I've only ever seen it in movies. My grandpa is still alive, at least, on my mother's side. It's like 95 or 96 or something. It's crazy. Do you think it was supposed to be Elon? I think that when Elon was held in higher favor by Trump and within the White House, he was trying to set himself up to be, if not the literal next president, then the person who effectively is president next. But I think that he failed because he failed to buy the victory in Wisconsin. Despite massive influence from him, like literally buying votes, he could not swing the state of Wisconsin towards electing that freak Republican state Supreme Court judge. She might have even won harder because of him. He's not eligible, though. The law doesn't matter. Also, again, it's not about whether he's literally the president. It's about whether he's secure in his position, Can you imagine Elon Musk as the deputy chief of staff to the president for decades to come? The permanent billionaire oligarch advisor to an indefinite Republican presidency? It doesn't matter who would be president. He would always be there. But that's done now. His influence is toxic. He's been stepping back from Doge lately, too. He just failed.